Well, it's finally here. Welcome explorers, my name is Patrick Bellix and this is my experiment where I make films with a crew of one. And if you go back on the last video on this channel, you'll see the first Lone Filmmaker film. It's called Play Along. Not bad for one guy, huh? So why has it taken this long? Many of you may know that I actually filmed this short back in March of 2021. Today it is September of 2021. Well, I'll tell you. This stuff takes a while. But actually, in all seriousness, this shouldn't have taken this long. I actually got a first cut of the film done pretty quickly, but then I realized it desperately needed a color grade, some denoising. There was a lot of problems that I ran into just having never made a film with one person. And so I was able to circumvent some of those, but I learned a lot while working on this film. Something that I think is going to be really helpful as I continue on with any of my collaborative projects or any new Lone Filmmaker films. I actually purchased the full version of DaVinci Resolve in order to get a few things done. I actually considered switching to DaVinci Resolve several times because Premiere Pro for me has always been my go-to, but lately I've noticed the instability of it all. But also I wanted to be able to color grade in it, which is something I haven't really gotten to do before. So I just decided to go ahead and jump into the deep end and get the whole package and start making my transition from Premiere Pro over to DaVinci Resolve. So while I was color grading and learning how to do a lot of this stuff and trying to work with the sound that I had, I really didn't feel like I could post any more episodes until I had this one done. So what happened the day of? Well, I arrived on set pretty early. I drove down there with my buddy Joe, who is the man behind the couple that is stalking them the entire time. And we got things set up pretty quickly. Joe helped me carry some things in, but after that I just said, you know what, you need to focus on your acting and I really should be doing the rest of this myself because, again, the Lone Filmmaker. Now, the biggest thing that you run into when you're trying to film something by yourself is that you're predominantly going to be working with the camera, so you need to figure out a solution for sound. So I kind of compromised a bit and I used lavalier mics like the one I have on right now. And I forgo the boom mic in that case. So basically I arrived on set, put lavalier mics on the actors and hit record just as we started the first shot, and I ran that recorder the entire time, almost like it was a wedding, and then later on synced up all of the sound in post with all of the different clips that I had. So that was a big time consumer right there. I feel like there's a easier way to go about this, and I just haven't quite figured it out yet, but it did work out. I was able to get everything synced. Now, throughout the time we were there was a lot of sound coming from the kitchen. We were working in a restaurant that was still open, and so we were kind of combating the restaurant noises, everything from the kitchen. We had a kind of private area, but it was open. You know, people were walking through occasionally to go to the bathroom, that sort of thing. So we did have a lot of sound, and later on in post, I tried to kind of cover that up by using my own sound and my own clean room tone in order to try and take out any sound that's coming from the restaurant and then replacing it with sound that I could control within the sound mixing process. I think I was, let's say, mildly successful at that. I feel like there's more sound mixing that I can learn how to do, and that's a place for me to grow. One thing that was a benefit of doing all of this is that because I was doing everything and I was able to kind of make quick decisions and changes, and I had planned things out very well, we actually ran through the shot list very quickly. We actually were done with the shot list that I created by about midday. And then I was able to, as I said, kind of get creative and come up with a couple of really interesting shots. Probably some of the more interesting shots that you saw in the film, I kind of came up with on the fly, and that was very enjoyable for me because at that point I could just be creative. On the flip side of that though, I did find that I had to be almost entirely technically minded on the set. So typically you know, I have my DP working on the camera, we have somebody else who's worried about sound, you know, we have a first AD that is, you know, keeping everybody in check and making sure that we're running on time. And so I really enjoy working with the actors on set and working through a performance in several takes. And because I was so technically minded, I was able to rehearse with them beforehand and get the performances into a good place. But more or less, I was mainly focused on shot and sound the entire time, and lighting, so I wasn't able to work with them as much as I probably normally would have. That I do think it's a testament to my actors' great strengths that they were able to give such great performances, more or less on my directing from rehearsal and script, and less so than my ability to give that to them on set. But I wish I could have, and that's one thing that is either going to get better as I do more Lone Filmmaker films, or I could just look forward to when I do more collaborative projects. I did notice that there's a little bit of equipment that I do need to invest in if I'm going to keep going down this path of crew of one projects. I need a better tripod. It was really lacking on set. There were a couple of pans that I wanted to do that were just not working out. There were a couple of tilts that I wish I could have done that, you know, I have a still camera tripod and it's a cheap one at that. So there's just no smooth movement there. And so everything kind of had to be locked down, or I had to do several takes in order to get clean movement. So that's on my Christmas list this year, is to get a new tripod. There are also a few shots that I got creative with. There's a couple shots that once the female character in the film enters the scene, you'll notice that it kind of becomes handheld, and I didn't want to do traditional handheld, and so I wanted it a little bit stabilized in camera. So I actually put the camera on, this is a little bit hard to describe. It was on basically two legs, or folded in and on one leg, in order to kind of stabilize it, but also to give it a little bit of wonkiness in order to be able to kind of communicate that when the female character enters, you are putting the male character off his footing, and he's trying to get back to that. I also need an external monitor or a separate stand with a monitor on top of it. I didn't notice while on set that the Canon 80D has a tiny screen that's about that big. While it looked fine on the monitor on set, once I got the footage into the computer, it was incredibly noisy, and to this day I can't really say exactly why. But I had to do a lot of denoising within DaVinci Resolve to get it to something that looked kind of like film grain rather than a mistake on my part, even though it was a little embarrassing. So what did I learn? I've identified some better equipment that I need in order to make sure that these films get better and better as we go along. I think I should do a little bit more rehearsal beforehand in order to make sure I have the performances exactly where I need to be. I did about, I think, 3 rehearsals before the actual shooting, maybe because it is the situation where I'm not going to be able to do as many adjustments on set. I could maybe do a full week of rehearsals beforehand. And I think I need to explore some better sound options in terms of post-production, maybe learn a little bit more about that in order to make sure that everything is cohesive in the way that some of my more collaborative projects are. So maybe I can find a few people to bring on the show in order to make sure that I learn at the same time you guys are learning. Well, that's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to be having a lot more content coming out over the course of the next few months, not just BTS or informational stuff, but maybe a few video essay things I'm going to experiment with, maybe a few script rewrites, hypothetical script rewrites, and then of course more Lone Filmmaker content. So don't forget to like this video, and please come back and see some other films shot with a crew of 1. Thanks. Bye.